Hi guys and welcome back to my channel. Really nice to see you back. It's been a while, but I finally finished my driver's license. On the 18th of March, I finally received the cute little card over here. And I thought, why not share with you about the process of obtaining a driver's license. I will tell you my stories of wins and definite losses, times that I needed to redo the exams, how the process is structured and what you can expect on different stage of obtaining a driver's license here in the Netherlands. I want to cover a lot of things in this video, or if you're just curious to hear about, hey, how did Elle manage to get a driver's license, I will tell you everything in great detail. So this is probably not the shortest video out there, but I hope you're excited as I am, so stay tuned with me. In total, it took me a year and a month to finish the license. I started in January 2023, right before I turned 24, and that's something you need to consider, that to aim for an A license, you must be turned 24 when you are doing the exams. Before that, of course, you can do the A1 and A2, but those licenses are for less powerful bikes, but you can always go for an A later on in life, which probably will take you less time. I should also mention that I did not have any prior experience with driving a scooter before starting this license. I do have a B license since I lived in Sweden, since 2019, but I really don't like driving cars, so I'm actually still a newbie when it comes to driving on the roads. Also because I never had a car, so I never got the experience actually to the level of being an advanced driver. So driving a motorcycle was very fresh to me, and I'll tell you what it felt like to be learning it step by step. There are three components to be obtaining an A license in the Netherlands. You first of all start with your theory exam, which is on a computer in a special CBR location, where you are given 50 multiple choice questions and you gotta have 44 correct, which sounds like doable, and although I think in Sweden the gap is a little bit bigger for the passing rates. I redid this exam 3 times for several reasons. First of all, I must mention that it costs approximately 40 euros to do it every time for a regular Dutch person. Here you need to understand that I do not speak Dutch, so I bought this English book, driving courses book with English terms. But to do the exam in English is basically not possible. So you either pay like 95 euros to be doing it with an interpreter. So you pay for a person to sit right next to you and translate the questions that you see on the screen to you live. And then you get the extra time to answer the questions. And then I thought for myself, why make it so complicated? You know, I know the driving rules. Like, I read this book, I think in total 2 times before I went to my first test. I was like, I'm gonna do it in Dutch. So on top of learning the driving rules that apply for motorcycle, and I would say the different parts are the placement on the road that you need to know, but also the knowledge about the motorcycle itself, but also like how much do I know about motorcycles in general. A lot of it was covered in the theory book. Plus, on top of that, I also needed to learn all the Dutch terms. And I must say that, okay, Swedish helped me a lot to understand maybe some terminology, but a lot of my time also went to be learning the Dutch terms to come to the exam. And so on the first exam, I think I got like 38 out of 50, to which I was like, okay, it was first try, not bad. My back then boyfriend said that he also failed it 3 times, so I was like not too worried about it. Maybe nobody gets it from the first try, but I also felt, okay, maybe if I would have studied more from the rule book, I would be doing better. So I scheduled my next exam within 2 weeks or so, and I failed it again with even worse results, even though I read once again this entire book from the beginning till the end and still did not manage. And that was the time when I was like, okay, maybe this is not for me. This is so difficult. I don't want to pay this much money for paying for an interpreter, but I felt like that wasn't the issue. So that was the time when I finally realized I need to change my approach. So I bought those trial tests. There are a lot of those on Dutch pages. I don't specifically remember the name of the one that I did, but it literally stimulates the same kind of question type that you get with CBR. And that is something that is so specific to the Dutch driver's license tests. You gotta know how they formulate the questions and what to look out for, and learn not to overthink the question that they are presenting to you. At the same time, what was so different for me compared to the Swedish driver's license was that it was very situational. So you would need to read the picture that is presented to you. What also made it really easy to do it in Dutch, but to understand how do they want you to think when they present you certain situations. And actually, after doing, I think, at least 20 practice tests, I finally realized, oh, now I'm getting the hint of it. So there are specific types of questions that always come on the exam, and the more practice exams you do, the more you're trained to recognize the kind of questions. So instead of actually learning the driving rules, you are more adapting to the way that exam is structured structured and learn how to pass this type of exam. That's what it's all about. So if you are there looking to do your theory test, maybe just go straight ahead and do practice tests instead of reading the book 3 times, because that would have saved me a lot of effort, a lot of stress, a lot of tears if I would have just had correct approach from the beginning. So learn to pass the exam and not learn the theory book, which is of course always important, but make sure you nail both, okay? And so you cannot book the next part of the exam where comes the 2 practical tests. You start with maneuvers, and when that is done, you move to the city driving. So maneuvers test you can only book when your theory is done, but you can start taking the driving lessons while you are still doing the theory, but the exam appointment cannot be made until the theory is completed and is a pass. Every driving lesson that I took was 1 hour long approximately, and that's with changing and driving to the location, because you usually just drive on a straight road with cones being brought there. I paid 55 euros per hour, I believe, and then of course the gear is being provided by the driving school that you are attending. I was really surprised. And I must say, I really underestimated how much more technical it is to drive a motorcycle compared to the car. Like, I was blind. So while being on a motorcycle and just starting the first 2 months, I couldn't believe how many things I need to keep in the back of my head to be nailing the vehicle I'm sitting on. It's so psychological and it's so new to me. Also, the fact that you need to balance yourself by looking in the right direction. Like, literally the first lesson and the most valuable one that my first coach trained me is look where you want to go. That's the first thing you learn, because the moment you look down, you lose balance. So you need to maintain focus on where do you want to end up being and constantly looking ahead. And for me, that was really new, so it took quite some time to kind of understand myself around the motorcycle. But then the maneuvers exam itself presents you with 4 categories of exercises. In total, there are 12 different maneuvers that you're training. On the exam, you get 7 of those. And in each category, you can fail 1. I'll go a little bit more into details on that. So the 4 categories that you're getting presented. So we always have the reverse parking, which is literally walking with the bike and parking it backwards, so you know how to walk with the bike. My coach apparently told me that there were quite some problems with people passing the test and that not being able to maneuver it while not being on the bike. So they added this exam not too long ago, just to make sure that people learn to also manipulate the bike while being on the side of it, and know, once again, to look in the right direction, not on the bike while driving it back and forward. And it's a pretty heavy thing, yes? So the moment you drop it, I am not able to pull up my own bike by myself. This is a mandatory exercise that is given to you. So out of the 7, that's for sure gonna be 1. And then out of the other 3 categories, 1 category is slow maneuvers, fast maneuvers, and braking exercises. So out of each other category that is not the walking and parking, you can fail 1 of each category, and you also get 2 tries to show that you know the exercise. So you can redo it once on the exam, but only once on each exercise. On the slow exercises, we have the slow slalom, which is mandatory. Then we have the quick exercises, where the dodging maneuver, uitwegsoefening, is mandatory. You always get it. And you have emergency stop. There are 3 types of stops. That one you will always get for sure. So let me tell you, I failed my theory 2 times, made it on the 3rd attempt. I needed to wait a half a year to be able to do my maneuvers test, because the waiting time in the Netherlands is so long that I booked it in the end of July. I did it in December, which was good for me because I'm a student and I'm working, so it was good stretch out time-wise, and I felt pretty confident doing it. And so I managed that one in one go. But let me tell you what the experience was. So even though usually you practice for 1 hour with your coach, when you get to the exam, the entire thing is finished within 15 minutes. And by the time we got there, it was actually like a big kind of Olympic stadium. The cornices are always put up and you can see which exercise is being placed where. And then there is an assessor who is taking you to take your helmet off, they check your ID with your face, and then they just tell you, you know, go, we're gonna start here, and then you just show them that you know what to do. So you're done within 15 minutes, but it goes quickly and it requires a lot of concentration. And oh my god, I was gonna wait like an hour between the guy who was coming from my school finished, and then my time was like 1 hour later, so I was just gonna have coffee and chat. But then my trainer negotiated with them that they would do me before the lunch break. So suddenly I had like 20 minutes to prepare myself before I needed to sit on the motorcycle and do it. And of course you go on the motorcycle that you practice on, right? I was really comfortable driving that one, but then you can feel, you see those guys, you know, in front of you, like 3 people taking the exam at the same time, and you can see the ones failing and failing and failing. You're like, oh my god, this is not what it's supposed to be looking like. So the tension is really building up, and I remember my first exercise was the slow slalom. I did it 2 times, and both of them, there are like 5 cones that you need to go in between, and I didn't even make it past 3rd cone. That one I knew how to do perfectly. Like, until coming there, I knew I could do it with my eyes closed. And still on the exam, I remember like my hands just wouldn't listen, you know, because you gotta look straight and you gotta turn the steering wheel, and it just didn't freaking work. My body just refused to be collaborating with me at that point now. And that means that because I failed one slow exercise, I needed to nail the 2nd one, and they gave me the A driving. I always freaked out because of just the nature of that maneuver is so scary. It's really narrow, and you always gotta look over your shoulder while you do big bends. I was like, I need to do this, otherwise I'm failing. So I failed it the first try, and I was like, okay, yeah, I know how to do this. So I remember like biting my lip, and I was like, I'm gonna do this. I literally like on the edge nailed the 2nd try of the 8th, and that's what actually made me pass the exam, because on the fast maneuvers I never had any problems because you have the speed, which allows you for more control, and actually statistically people fail the most because of the slow exercise. So I knew the moment that was done, all the braking and the fast maneuvers were not the problem. Walking with a bike, come on, if you fail that, then I hope you're not on the road out there. But I couldn't believe it, I made it. And you know, the feeling of driving the bike after completing the maneuvers exam, because the guy who told me that I was done and I actually passed, I just fist bumped him. I was like, oh my god, I cannot believe it that I'm actually done with this and I never need to drive the 8 again. But I understand why this is important, because you kind of learn how to manipulate the bike in whatever kind of situation that you encounter while being on the road later. And then because of some life circumstances, I needed to change schools to a different city. I found a new driving coach to do my city driving, and I was so confident that I'm gonna nail this one as quickly as I can. I mean, I have a car license, so let's do this. How do I say? The dynamic of being on a motorcycle in the traffic is really different than being in a car. There are so many different things that you need to think about, just because you're so vulnerable and so small on the road, and you're also super vulnerable with weather conditions and to the speed of others. You also gain speed much easier. So I really practiced then how to operate my bike in a way that I fit in the traffic best, but also needed to consider that, yeah, I am quicker than others, so I'm supposed to accelerate quicker to ensure the flow of the traffic. And so that took some time to learn, but I think I took maybe 8 lessons, 6-8 lessons driving in the city, and those were longer, so those were double the price. So it was in a bigger city, so I paid like 65 euros per hour, and then you drive for 1.5-2 hours in the traffic, because it doesn't make sense to be there for 50 minutes, because then you don't get to actually drive both on the highway in the city and all of those kind of different roads. So I booked my exam, and my new trainer said that, yeah, actually you're ready, so let's do it. I did it and I failed it, which approximately cost you 280 euros for one try. Also consider the waiting time, of course, there. That was in February this year. And what I failed on was that on that specific day there was a lane on a highway that was closed off, and it was closed off on a drive out from a highway. So there was a speed reduction on the neon board, and when I was driving off, I transferred to the most right lane, because that's what I'm supposed to do, plan ahead, you know. But I didn't see that above the 90 limitation there was also a sign with an arrow pointing to the lane where I was before. So I switched to the lane that was already closed off, which failed me on the exam basically. I actually never mentioned to you what it feels like to be doing a city driving, because it's so different from the car. Because in a car, the instructor is sitting right next to you, right, giving you instructions, but also he's able to manipulate the vehicle while they're sitting with you. On a motorcycle, you just drive in front of somebody with a car behind, and you have a headset in, so they tell you the directions where to go, but you're fully in charge of what's going on, which adds some more credibility to for your own life. I've actually heard people failing on the exam, like a guy who was in the school where I was at. He failed because he stopped behind the truck at the junction while waiting for the traffic lights, because he could have gone in the left lane. He decided to stop behind the trucks, and they failed him on the fact that he didn't consider his own safety, purely because the truck driver could not see him. So I think the rules for motorcycle tests are really strict, and so I wasn't surprised. I found it really fair that they failed me on a city driving for the first time because I didn't see the sign. Of course, it was an occasional thing and I could be upset by the fact that, yeah, it screwed me over, but I should have seen the sign. So I was like, yeah, gotta do it again. My budget for that was already like at the absolute bottom. I can tell that until that moment, I approximately already spent like 3,500 euros on this. Insanely expensive. Also, I mean, the Netherlands is not the most cheap country to live in, but just for a plastic car to allow you to drive a motorcycle was pretty expensive, but what are we gonna do? Then I got my second trial rescheduled for like April, and I was like, oh my god, am I gonna wait now almost 2 months to just try to drive again? And it was already getting a little bit warmer, and I was like, how long is it gonna take to finish this? Because I never planned on having this process to be stretched out for so long. But then my coach called me like a week before my exam that I actually took, and told me that, yeah, there is a new spot available. I reserved you for the 18th of March, and I was literally in Rotterdam with my parents celebrating my birthday, and I was like, whoa, okay, let's do it. I mean, I felt ready. On the first trial, I scheduled 2-3 lessons within that week that I knew I had the exam scheduled. Then my coach had really troubles planning in his working hours, so I ended up driving 2 times now in between my fail and my new trial, and my commitment was so high. I must tell you, I have astigmatism, I think that's what it's called. So I even bought lenses to be able to see further way ahead, which I don't think is legal, but I really wanted to make sure that I get it right this time, and the weather was helping me out, and I got there and I was like, okay, let's do it. Also, by the time you get to the assessment place, to CBR, you enter this big room, and then you see who is the person who's gonna take your exam. And when my coach saw the guy who was gonna take my exam, he turned pale, and he told me later this was a guy who's usually taking exams on cars in Amsterdam, and he was really surprised to see him in Harlem taking a motorcycle. And the guy was like super Dutch, and he looked like he'd been working with CBR for like 30 past years. So he was like, do you know what we're gonna do today? I was like, drive in the traffic. He was like, yeah, let's go, try to be safe, hold your distance, free yourself, let's do it. So he gives me a new headset that I put in. Before you sit on the bike and the examinator is sitting in the car behind you, so you are asked to tell something about the bike. So they're asking you a technical question, which is 99% of the time, tell me something about the tires, but you're supposed to show that you know a little bit about the vehicle you're driving. Then they also ask you for a side check. So you stand on the parking lot and they ask you to read the plate number that is a little bit further away. And yeah, we went driving, and usually we would drive on the roads where I practice with my coach because he knew where the examinators usually take people. But this time, after 10 minutes, we were on a road I've never been on before. And let me tell you, I was not even close to being as confident as I was on the first try. We were driving roads, I wasn't even sure if it was 60, 80 limited, so I drove whatever I felt was comfortable. I was really cautious of my surroundings. The weather was amazing, not too much traffic. And then we get almost to the end, and I was doubting myself on everything I was busy with. And so we come back to the Harlem city. I know we are almost at the CBR, and I just see we're coming to that big junction at the entrance of the city, and that junction has like 5 lanes both ways, and there is another junction after that with 4 lanes each side. And I see myself, I'm driving on the most left lane, and I'm behind a truck driver. Listen to me, the truck driver was learning, so it had a blue L in the back, and I was like, okay, there goes my driver's license again. So I tried to like maintain a distance of like half a truck so he would see me in the mirrors. But because I knew on the next turn I needed to take left because that's where CBR was, and those were my instructions, we take left on the next junction. So I needed to be behind this, and this guy needed to turn left as well, probably to CBR. Maintain safe distance, kept rolling in my head. And you know what happens? The moment the truck turns left and I go behind him maintaining a distance, my examinator starts hurrying me up, being like, quicker, can you go faster? Go faster. And I was like, oh my god, I'm driving too slow. This is not good. He's not happy with me. This is it. I think because he was driving already on the yellow or like orange light while I was turning, maybe he was a little bit stressed by that. So we come to the CBR, and I was like, okay, this did not go well. And my coach apparently wasn't even in the car. He was just chilling at the CBR. So we come there, down, I remove my helmet, and I'm like, so, but also like you can feel your stomach being so cramped up because you were focusing for such a long period of time, because this exam is like approximately 45-50 minutes you're driving. And then I sit down, and he asked me to give him the radio, and I was like, okay, this is it. And that's the moment he stands up and he gives me the hand, congratulations, you passed. I was like, If I could only describe you how much weight fell off my shoulders the moment he said it. He really kept the tension until the last moment, but I was like, oh, I'm done. So the next moment, the same week, I went to Permanent, I submitted all the papers, paid for an extra speed driver's license, so I paid approximately 90 euros to receive the actual physical card. And then I went to pick up my bike, which I bought summer last year, that has been standing for a while. That is also a nice story, guys, but basically, when I went to pick up the bike, it was standing in a shed since like October, November this year. The accumulator died. So while I was having the motorcycle license, I was in the rain there, learning how to charge the battery with one of my colleagues from a car, which also was like a good adventure of a couple of hours trying to see how to charge a battery of my dead bike. And then I was there on my own bike, driving to work in Permanent, so Schiphol. Oh my god, guys, if I could only describe you the feeling, what it feels like to finally be done with something like that and being on the road by myself. Really intimidating, but also the speed, because I used to be driving the naked bike at my driving school, but now I was on my own sports bike. Nothing I can describe to you until you experience it on your own. And so I hope for you guys who are dreaming about having a motorcycle license that you go for it. And I mean, we only live once, so why not finish it this life and enjoy the freedom of being on a motorcycle on the road. But also, please be careful if you're ever driving on a motorcycle right now. Out of the tips that I would have for people who are just beginning with their motorcycle license, apart from everything I already mentioned, is getting your own gear. At least from the beginning, I would at least invest in a good helmet and gloves to make it more comfortable for yourself to attend the lessons, and you kind of get used to those to then maybe increase your success on the exam, but it's also a little bit more nice to use your own gear rather than using the ones that driving school provides you, even though they always do. Now it's up for me to just practice on my own bike, because as I told you, I'm not used to be driving this kind of fast bike, and it's a different type of bike where I'm laying a little bit forward, so I'm still learning a lot, and I feel like it's my turn to also get used to many things and actually learn how to drive it. This week I finally made it to Zandvoort on my own bike, which just felt so wonderful. Really reminds me why I actually wanted to get the license from the first beginning, and to just go to the beach whenever I feel like it and watch the sunset is everything I could wish for. So yeah, I hope this video was either entertaining or useful for you guys. If you have any questions, drop them down below here. It's really nice to see you all here, and I hope you're doing well. See you in another one.